The Thunder, led by Chris Paul's 28 points, locked down a 104-100 win last night against the Rockets to force a Game 7. James Harden led the Rockets with 32, but went 3 for 11 from beyond the arc. Houston had a chance to tie or take the lead with under 10 seconds left, but Russell Westbrook turned the ball over on a bad pass to effectively clinch the game for OKC. Chris Broussard still with us. Chris, did the Thunder win it, or did the Rockets lose this one?
I was on First Things First earlier this morning, and I praised Chris Paul. And he was tremendous. Look, he's the best clutch player this season in the NBA, and he certainly was that last night. He was terrific. 8 of their last 12 points, 14 points in the fourth quarter. But all that said, when you have the most talented team, in most cases, when you have the most talented team, when you got 2 Hall of Fame superstars versus 1, then if you lose, it is typically your fault. And I think that was the case last night with the Houston Rockets. Obviously, we can jump on Russ. He was just bad all night. He had 2 turnovers in the last 90 seconds, missed the layup, threw up an air ball, all of that. But I also have to look at Mike D'Antoni. And we know Mike D'Antoni does not make many adjustments, right? If you're shooting a 3 and you miss 15 straight, you miss 18 straight, he's going to tell you to keep shooting. Don't go inside. Don't drive. Don't get a mid-range shot. Keep shooting the 3, and that has often been his demise. And last night, instead of playing the game, like he sees Russ is struggling. All right, it's not his night. They're down early. They're down 6 early in the fourth quarter. He takes Russ out for 3 minutes. The Rockets go on a 12-3 run to turn that 6-point deficit into a 3-point lead. He puts Russ right back in, almost as if he's not watching the game, but just because now it's time to put Russ in. I understand you usually let your stars close, and I'm not saying you couldn't put him in at the end, but let it play out a little more. See if you can ride this run a little further and put the game out of reach. He didn't do that. He goes to Russ, and the rest was history. Now, look, at the end of that game, their last possession, they're down 102-100. The biggest Russ fan, and I like Russ, I usually defend him, but the staunchest Westbrook fan knows his late-game decision-making is a problem. So why is the ball in his hands instead of James Harden's? I know Harden's had his moments, too, in the playoffs, but I would much rather have the ball in his hands than in Russ's. So I think as much credit as I want to give OKC, I think Houston killed themselves in this game.
Yeah, but for me, I'm going to stick with your original point. I gave Chris Paul the credit because when they have the ball, when the Rockets have the ball up 6 with 4 minutes to go, and I'm like, they're done. Because as you said, they had the lead, and the Rockets ate that away in a matter of no time. And the next thing you know, I'm like, well, okay, you had a great run, but now it's over. And Chris Paul started dancing. He's like, hey, he had to put on his nice shoes, his nice outfit, and say, come here, James Harden, dance with me for a second. Covington, come over here at the elbow, dance with me for a second. And then he backed out beyond the 3, almost stepped out of bounds, and as he hit the 3, he runs by and pops Covington on the butt. And I'm like, uh-oh, y'all might be in trouble, Rockets. And I think the thing is that you mentioned that Russ in that situation. James Harden is supposed to have the ball. You have to understand Russ has been away for 2.5 weeks. He's trying to find a rhythm, trying to get his conditioning back. And you put him back in there as if he hadn't missed a beat. I wouldn't have done that, but Chris Paul was sensational. And you mentioned his clutch buckets down the stretch. And he said something very interesting. He said some people built for these moments. Some people shy away from it. Skip, you like basketball, but you covered a lot more football. You've seen a lot of guys go up and make spectacular catches in the first 3 quarters, but let it get late in the ball game. And all of a sudden, man, it was just, I should have caught. No. Make the catch in the fourth quarter late in the ball game like you made in the first 3 quarters. Chris Paul in the fourth quarter was magnificent. And if he wasn't, even with those turnovers, even as bad as Russ played down the stretch, if Chris Paul isn't great, they still don't win that game.
Yet, Mr. Sharp.
Yes.
Even though it is rare that you see a player take over a game down the stretch the way Chris Paul did on both ends of the floor, because he stole it from James and he stole it from Russ, And then the last play, he just stole, he took over the last play, and he was the one that ran Russ out of the lane, and then he's going out to cover Covington.
Yeah.
I've never seen such an imprint as what Chris Paul put on that game. Obviously, he's got it in for the Rockets. He wants to show the Rockets, and unfortunately, not for the benefit of Houston, Russell Westbrook wants to show Oklahoma City, I can do this back to you.
Mm-hmm.
And look, this is just me. Bottom line, Russell Westbrook lost that game last night. And my point is, I believe the Rockets are better against the Thunder without Russell Westbrook. To Chris's point, you can just see what happens when he goes out of the game, because it's just one-to-one then. It's one-on-one with James Harden going against Chris Paul. And right now, the Rockets play better team basketball against a team like Oklahoma City, an overachieving team, without Russ in the mix. Well, you saw what happened in the first 3 games of the series. Houston wins big in game 1, big in game 2, and had game 3. And if Daniel House had hit the second free throw, they're going to be up 3-0. That's no Russ. Now, if somehow Houston survives game 7 and goes on to the Lakers, they need both their superstars. They need star power versus LeBron AD star power. But in this case, Russell just plays completely out of control against his former team. And last night, he turned into Russell East, West, North, and Southbrook. He was going 1,000 miles an hour in every direction, and I couldn't watch it after a while. And if we could see the final play, D'Antoni said it was up to he just sits back, whatever you guys want to do.
Right,
it's up to James and Russ. They decided, let's run this play. You did? You wanted to run this play? This is just craziness, because James is trying to pick for Russell. And it's a traffic jam of defenders in the middle of the lane. There's nowhere to go. Russell has no plan. He leaves his feet with the ball and decides, oh, maybe somebody's trailing, and I'll throw it out of bounds.
Right.
And the game's over. And I thought he had one last chance to redeem himself after 6 turnovers already, and the air ball, and all the disaster plays. And instead, they don't even get a shot in the end, and it's Russ's fault. So bottom line to this game, with 4:19 left, up 6.
And they got the ball.
And they got the ball, and they give up a 16-2 run to close the game. That's just wrong when you got 2 superstars, but one of them got in the way of the other one.
Well, I think the thing was, if you look at Chris Paul, what he does, Skip, this play, what they're trying to do reminds me of the Villanova, North Carolina, where the guy brings it up and the guy that took the ball out of bounds shoots the 3.
Okay.
If you look at Covington,
that was a call play.
But it looks like Covington is coming to the top of the key to shoot the 3. Because if you look at Chris Paul noticed, like you said, he was in this system. If you look at Chris Paul, he disregards. Look at in the corner, P.J. Tucker. He said, forget P.J. Tucker. And he goes right now to Covington. But looks like Covington is coming to the top of the key to shoot the 3.
Chris Paul stopped Russ's drive and went out and covered just in case he caught the pass.
Right.
Covington.
Yes.
Maybe, but it doesn't look like Russ has any plan at all to really get it back. That was like a last-second thought of, uh-oh, I'm up in the air with nowhere to go. I better dish it back.
Well, because Harden is standing there like, I thought Harden was going to set the pick and then Harden get the ball back. But he doesn't even look at Harden.
No.
One of the challenges with Russ, he's always been the strongest personality on his team and on the bench, right? Like Kevin Durant, one thing used to bother him in OKC was, at the end of games, Russ is taking the ball as much as he's giving it to Durant or even more, right? And Durant, instead of going to Russ himself, give me the ball, this is my time, he wanted the coaches to do it. And Scott Brooks and the other guys weren't strong enough in their personality to tell Russ to do that. And that drove Durant crazy at times. Same thing here. D'Antoni doesn't want confrontation. And I don't know how it has to be that confrontational, but he's not going to tell Russ, give him the ball. And Harden, who's a stronger personality, Harden or Russ? Who's going to go to Russ and say, give me the ball? Nobody. And that is part of the problem. And look, if they lose this series, I'm with Skip. They need Russ, obviously, and they got a better chance of beating the Lakers with Russ. I don't think they would beat them, but they can make it tougher on them with Russ. If they lose this series, though, think about what just happened. They were 2 games away or maybe a blown hamstring away from probably winning a championship in 2018. And then they trade, Paul for Westbrook. Remember, as bad as Chris Paul's contract was, Westbrook has an extra year at nearly $48 million a year on that deal. What does this mean for Daryl Morey if they lose this series? What happens to Mike D'Antoni? And if you bring in another coach, how's he going to fit Westbrook and Harden together? So if they lose this series, you can't overstate the possible ramifications of this.
Well, but you're going to be stuck with this roster because you don't have any bigs. You traded Capella. So now your tallest guy is 6'7.5" Covington or 6'8" Covington. So what are you going to do? But Kevin Durant should have said, hey, James Harden should have went to, hey, bro, let me get that. Let me get that off your hand. Let me get that rock off your hand. I mean, you got, hey, Chris, you don't have to, like you said, you don't have to be confrontational, but you can like, hey, bro, I'm going to get that. That last one, let me have that.
So, Chris, who you got in Game 7?
Well, I picked Oklahoma City in 6, just, before the series. So, obviously, we always want our pick to be right. I'm going to go with OKC because I think if it's close, they were the best clutch team in the league this season. And Houston